Elias and me, we have been PhD students for roughly 5 years here at Chalmers. And we thought this would be a nice opportunity to show a wrap-up of our PhD work and show the examples that we have implemented in our PhDs and mostly how they relate to Ferrite and which features we have used. So go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Kim. Does this work?
This should work, yes.
Nice. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the overarching topic of my thesis has been about multi-scale modeling of fiber composites. So I looked at modeling aspects both at the structural level, so macro scale and subscale. And in terms of numerical methods, my PhD has been kind of scattered. I've tried a lot of different things and implemented a lot of stuff. So of course, I've used the finite element method with Ferrite, but I also looked into isometric analysis. I looked into solver technology with for structural problems, so alkaline solvers and continuation solvers and stuff like that. And quite recently, I also worked and published papers on immerse boundary methods. For all these implementations I've done, I always use the Ferrite and tensors as a backbone. Yeah, so I will kind of present some of my work in the order of my published papers. So in the first publication I made was we developed a adaptive isometric shell element for prediction and initiation of growth of delamination in layered composite structures. So here I have an animation. So it's a layered composite beam. So it's clamped in one end and have point force in the other. And this beam has two initial delamination cracks here. And then as we increase the point force, the delamination propagates like this. And here we use cohesive zone elements to kind of capture and model the energy release from the delamination. And the novel aspect of this work was that we had used the isometric shell elements with adaptive capabilities. So as these delamination propagates, the mesh is adaptively refined, but this is done in the background, so it's not really shown in this animation. So other than the publication and research itself, my contribution to the world, let's say, was this isometric package for isometric analysis called IDA.jl. And quickly, for you who don't know what isometric analysis is, it's basically the same thing as standard finite elements, but instead of using these Lagrange functions or hat functions, we are using these higher order B-splines. We use spline meshes. So these splines have the nice property of being higher order continuous and also continuous over element boundaries. So for example, this green function here for Lagrange mesh, they would go to 0 at the nodes, but in IJ it kind of continues over element boundaries. And this has some nice properties. It's beneficial in some applications and also crucial in some others. Yeah, so IJ kind of works as an extension or an add-on to Ferrite, which speaks kind of and integrates quite nicely, which kind of speaks of the generality of Ferrite. The basically only thing I have to do in IJ.jl is to implement an IJ grid structure. So in IJ you have to store more information than just the node location. You also have to store weights for each node. And then we also have to implement these interpolations and also special cell values and stuff like that. Currently, I know about 3 other users that have pinged me on Slack and asked questions. That's very nice. That's actually used by others also. And like I said, IJ is really suitable or helpful in in special problems, for example, Kirchhoff love theory or Cahn-Hillard equations and stuff like that. And in the future, I would like to have even better incorporation into Ferrite, because currently it doesn't integrate very well with the L2 projector, for example, but there's really no reason it shouldn't be possible. The second thing I want to talk about before handing over to Kim is the work I did in my third paper, where we developed a multi-scale framework or computational harmonization for plate elements. So the context here is that we have a plate structure on the macro scale, and then we have some sort of subscale. Here we had a bit of a toy problem, which was particle composites. And the idea here is, in this computational harmonization framework, is that for each material point, we prolong the deformation onto the subscale, we apply them as boundary conditions, and then we solve this subscale problem, and then we can homogenize back the results to get quite detailed modeling of the subscale. And yeah, and this part of my thesis was the one where I can basically use vanilla Ferrite, I call it, without much other implementations. So in this case, we had a particle composite, like I said, and we wanted to do statistical analysis. So we need to generate hundreds of these mesoscale structures or microscale structures to do our statistical averaging. And then we could do that quite nicely with the Ferrite mesh. So we could batch mesh a lot of these automatically. And then for boundary conditions, most standard boundary conditions for multi-scale problems are implemented in Ferrite, so periodic, Dirichlet, and Neumann. So that's really nice. And then, like I said, we run hundreds of these. So then we want to speed up the simulation a bit, and then we could use threaded assembly on the cluster on 32 cores, and that helped quite a lot. But of course, the main bottleneck was the direct solver. And I tried to play around a bit with iterative solvers, but was generally unlucky with that. So I mostly used direct solver, the standard in Julia. And then finally, we did post-processing in PowerView and yes, standard Julia. So that's some of my work, but now I'm going to hand over to Kim.
Yeah, my PhD work is about modeling a quite specific fracture phenomenon in polycrystalline nickel-based superalloys. And we've worked on two different parts, one where we get an environmentally assisted intergranular fracture type, and then another one where we get a transgranular fracture type that's not so much coupled to the environment, but a lot more involved with the microstructure, at least in our modeling. We've published a number of papers, and I'm going to dive a little bit into... I'm apparently not switching slides with this. I'm going to dive a little bit into the implementations that we have done here. So on the first part, we have a chemomechanically coupled problem. So we get oxygen diffusion from the environment into grain boundaries. The oxygen then mechanically weakens the grain boundaries, and the stress state in the structure also accelerates the oxygen diffusion. So we're dealing with a fully coupled multiphysics problem. And we know that this oxygen only ever enters in the grain boundaries. So that's a quite specific property. And that's why we use cohesive zone modeling for the fracture modeling part here, which means we can insert a specific type of finite elements that can break just along the grain boundaries. Since we also know that oxygen only ever occurs in the grain boundaries, we can introduce an oxygen field that only lives on the grain boundaries. So this is a few keywords that are important to the implementation in terms of Ferrite. One is that we have several fields, but one of them only lives on a subdomain. So I have a displacement field for the overall stress state, but then I have this oxygen field that's on a subdomain, which is the grain boundaries. And the second one is we have cohesive elements in the grain boundaries, but then we have regular continuum elements that could be triangles, quadrilaterals, whichever element you like in the grains. But that means I have different element types, meaning I have a mixed grid. Back in 2020, when I started my PhD, these conditions could be handled by a data structure called mixed Duff handler. That's where I think both Elias and me did our very first Ferrite PRs on, getting that to work. And over the years, I've developed a lot on that. And last year, I talked about how the Duff handler, the mixed Duff handler became the Duff handler. We did a lot of improvements on it, and nowadays, with our regular Duff handler data structure, we can handle both mixed grids and fields on subdomains. A lot of these things are going to remind you of my talks from the last year. So this is how to set up subdomains. And then the year before, I talked about how to implement cohesive elements. So if you think that's interesting topics, please go back to these talks. I want to point out a few more things that were interesting implementation-wise, maybe, that were possible to do in Ferrite. One of them relates to the formulation of the chemomechanical coupling. So we have these cohesive elements which have duplicate nodes and then sort of live on the midplane, and they have integration points. And now if you look at this graph, that's a bit non-standard integration points. Usually we would use something like Gauss integration points, and I would only need 2 for the same accuracy, but they're inside the element. Now it happens that in the cohesive element, I want to compute the traction, and I will also want to compute the gradient of the traction, but my field are the displacements, which means I can compute my tractions as a material model in the integration points, which then naturally makes it difficult to compute a gradient of that. Now, there are different ways how you could tackle this. I could have done L2 projections to the nodes and interpolated from there. That would have been totally possible in Ferrite as well. But we chose to do something else. We used a nodal integration scheme, which then means that on the positions of the nodes, I would also have these values available and could locally compute gradients. Now, if that was a good or a bad idea from a mathematical perspective is a different discussion maybe, but something that was totally available in Ferrite. Something else that I've really enjoyed is the power of automatic differentiation and how it can just run through tensor equations. This coupled model has step functions in a number of different places, but those of you who are a bit experienced with Newton solvers will know that a step function might really impact your convergence behavior. And things run a lot smoother if you use some sort of regularized step function. So often some type of 10H functions, and we have them in various places in the material models. We've inserted them along the way when realizing where the convergence problems are coming from or which properties we would like to add. And this can drastically change the tangents of the material model. But since I'm heavily relying on automatic differentiation, just changing the implementation of my material model itself would be enough, and I would not have to worry about how it impacts the gradient since they were automatically computed, which is a high convenience feature in this case. Then we can see some pretty animation of a pretty crack that's chemomechanically driven. I'm maybe not going to go into the details of what's going on here, but this is the type of simulation I've run. For these polycrystals, I've usually always generated my grids with Gmesh and used Ferrite Gmesh to import that into Ferrite, which works really neatly. And I heavily rely on Makia for all these pretty movies, which was a really smooth experience. A few more highlights on the second part of my work where I do phase field modeling. And here we do gradient crystal plasticity plus phase field, which results in 3 different fields that I have in my problem. So the regular displacement field U, then for breaking things, I have a damage field D. And then for the gradient plasticity, I also have some sort of gradient field. It's not so important in detail what that's doing right now, but in these examples that we had here, they're independent in each grain, which means that they can share nodes on the grain boundaries. So what I do here is I have no duplicates on the grain boundaries, but I would like to retain a single grid representation because that's convenient. But then my U and my D field, they're continuous, while this G field is discontinuous. So after a couple of years of other people implementing things, it was very convenient to just grab the toolbox and use the affine constraints that were originally implemented for periodicity, and use linear constraints to tie the displacement and the damage field together across the grain boundaries and just say this degree of freedom must be equal to that one. There are certainly other ways to do this, but it was a really fast implementation to make use of these tools and a place where I could really profit from other people working with the same thing. We have also solved this phase field problem with staggered solver. So I've solved the displacement and this gradient field in one step and then the phase field in another step, which is a fairly standard procedure for solving phase field problems. There's other methods as well. We chose this one. I used several Dov handlers for that case. So one Dov handler that would keep the displacement and the gradient fields and one Dov handler for the damage field. And then it comes to the solver, and that's something where it was really nice to have full control because phase field problems can be really tricky to solve. Often people don't talk a lot about the tolerances that they use, but they are extremely important as to how you actually solve the problem. So it's been really important to be able to control several types of tolerances to control what happens when an iteration doesn't converge. And also for this particular model to have a very deep control of when to update which history variables, because each of these fields, of course, comes with history variables. And the staggered solver will not work if you don't update them at the right time and keep them constant at the same time. So this really fine-grained control was important for that problem. Yeah, which brings me to the last pretty movie, because now we all want to see how things break, right? So here to the left, we see how the structure breaks, and to the right, we see how the structure plastifies. The example shows a number of things that occur in the model, but maybe implementation-wise, the important thing again to say is that I've used Mach here to generate this animation, and this is not published yet. It will be part of my PhD thesis, but once you see the published version, you're going to see that the static figures in the paper actually look exactly the same as this animation, which is a really nice feature of being able to produce high quality graphics and then animate them to show a bit more details when possible in a presentation. Yeah, that's my last example. And with that, I should maybe say that if you're interested in either of our work, you should keep the last week in November in mind. Elias will defend his PhD on 25th of November, and I will defend on 29th of November. And it will be possible to follow both of us online on Zoom if you're interested in more.